Hey guys, Chris Cooking Nashville here. Cheat meals and what we're gonna do about them. Let's talk about it today. All right, y'all, Chris Cooking Nashville and the beautiful Ash Taylor here to talk with you guys today. So I think this is an interesting subject and one that honestly, I'm not sure a lot of channels cover. If they do cover it, I think there is kind of just a black and white, one layer sort of approach that they take to it. And I'm not saying they're wrong. I would just like to offer our perspective on these kinds of things because I think you're going to come across times on a keto diet or a carnivore diet where remaining super true and faithful to that keto diet or carnivore diet may be difficult or maybe even impossible. I'm not saying that you couldn't just fast your way through it, but you know, if you're 2 or 3 days in a position where you're not controlling really your own access to a food supply, or there are pressures put on you culturally or things from around you where you have to deal with this kind of stuff, it can be very difficult to try to figure out what it is you're going to do, and it can be very difficult to control what actually goes into your body. So when you're eating a proper human diet, there are times that the pressure can make it difficult to not cheat, and there's a lot of different perspectives on this. There are people who say any cheat meal is a weakness and you just need to get over that and you need to strong arm yourself into never doing it. I understand the perspective where they're coming from because a cheat meal oftentimes is, for some people, an excuse to just continue living into some carbohydrate addiction or some bad choice, and one cheat meal turns into 2, turns into 10, turns into 6 months down the road. I did that myself, so I fully understand that that can be a pathway, and I think what those people are saying is you need to avoid that pathway to where you end up going off the rails, and I would agree, you want to stay away from that pathway. Another sort of outlook that I've seen on cheat meals is that you shouldn't call them cheat meals, you should call them treat meals because they're an absolutely vital part of a proper human diet, that you occasionally allow yourself to have these things, and if you don't, that you're just destined to eventually lose total control, and this is what keeps you stable. I've experienced a little bit of that myself from time to time, where when I have control and something would really be nice, it does seem very much like if I could just have this once, I can go right back to what I do. There's a lot of people that are very successful doing that kind of a plan, and I understand where those kinds of people are coming from as well. Then there's a whole bunch of people that are in the middle of this entire thing, and there's different shades of how they feel about all of this, but sometimes they think cheat meals are a good thing. Sometimes they think they're a bad thing. Sometimes they were worried that it's going to trigger them to go off the rails. Sometimes they say it's, important because it gives them the relief because of a proper human diet being boring for them. I mean, there's so many different ways that this plays out in everybody's life. But I want to share with you how this played out in our lives this last weekend and just what my own personal thoughts are on this. Now, I'll tell you up front, if you're a dogmatic keto or carnivore purist who thinks that cheat meals are a sin and you're going to die and you deserve to die and how dare you have a cheat meal, if you're one of those people, you may as well click out of the video because I really don't care what you have to say. I don't think that's a kind way to treat people, especially who are trying to get their health under control, because they don't necessarily think clearly enough to always have the level of self-control that you are expecting them to and beating them up for it. We've talked about this. This is like a drug addict walking into a rehab center and you insult them and beat them down for what they're struggling with rather than trying to help them. That's not why we're here. So if you're one of those people, you may as well click out of the video because we don't want to hear about it. If, on the other hand, you are a person who is interested in having a proper discourse about this, then I would like to tell you about a situation that we ended up in this last week, and I'd love to hear some thoughts and opinions on this and how this works for you in your particular proper human diet. So unfortunately, this last week we were up in Indiana, spending time with family, not for a reason that we would normally want to be someplace like that. It was for my grandfather's funeral, and he passed away pretty suddenly, but was getting near the end of his life and was struggling with some things because, he was pushing 96 years old. Yeah. And he's been through such an amazing amount of things in his life, and it's a very long story that we don't have time for today, but he was ready, and he knew where he was going. He was going to see my grandma again, and he was trusting eternal salvation. So he was ready. He truly was just happy to go. He'd done everything he wanted to do, and so it was a celebration of life. We really enjoyed getting to celebrate all of the amazing things he did and all of the thousands of people he has impacted in amazing ways in his life. And for the wake after the funeral, we ended up having Skyline Chili. And if you guys don't know what Skyline Chili is, it's a thing, is very regional to the Cincinnati area where I come from, in that little tri-state area all around Cincinnati. I'm from Indiana, but right there against Ohio. Cincinnati style chili is a spiced meat sauce chili that has a bunch of Greek seasonings and some different things in it. And it is served over pasta and then shredded cheddar cheese on top of it. It's very strange, but it's so good. One of my favorite things in the world to eat. And it was one of my grandpa's favorite foods too. I grew up going to Skyline Chili with my grandparents and having just such good memories and good food and good times. And so they catered in Skyline Chili in honor of my grandpa. One of his other favorite things in the world was chocolate milkshake. And he drank chocolate milkshake all the time. Now, I'm going to tell you guys, my grandpa did not eat a proper human diet. He lived mostly on carbs. It's amazing he made it as long as he did with the diet that he was eating. It would kill anybody else, truthfully. But he, God bless him, was just able to do it. And when someone is that age, you're not going to change them. You're not going to tell them what to do. So, you know, we just tried to make him as happy as he could be and let him make his choices. And that's the kind of stuff he ate. But his favorite drink was chocolate milkshake. And so we toasted my grandpa after having a meal of Skyline Chili. We toasted him with little tiny shots of chocolate milkshake. So I ate Skyline Chili with the pasta, and I had a little bit of chocolate milkshake. Way too many carbs in a single meal. And I felt it within 20 to 30 minutes. I was like, my body temperature went up. I was hot. I was kind of lightheaded. I sat there and I did not feel good. My stomach didn't feel good. I mean, it was rough. And I knew that that was going to happen, but that was a very intentional choice for me because I found myself in a position where, one, I didn't have access to anything else. But even if I did have access to something else, I found myself in a position, do I want to take the attention away from honoring my grandfather's memory today with the rest of the family and doing something that I know would have meant a lot to him? Do I want to insist in this moment to make myself the center of attention and point out that I can't eat this and I need something else, and to take my thoughts completely away from him and celebrating his life and put them squarely on me? Because I want to be so strict and just almost dogmatic about not eating anything like that, that I just can't let myself do this. And I'm not saying that my perspective on this is the right one. I'm saying it's my perspective on this, and you may completely disagree, and that's fine. But I felt like it would be nothing but an insult to his memory and to my family to do anything but go ahead and eat that Skyline Chili. There are cultural reasons. There are social situations, all sorts of places we find ourselves that put pressure on us to eat something that is maybe not keto or not carnivore, and it may not make us feel good. Now, if you're teetering on the edge, like I was with my carbohydrate addiction before I had done 365 days of a carnivore diet with no cheats, if you are teetering on the edge and you know yourself well enough to know that eating that is a trigger and it's going to send me back off the rails like a drug addict, I am in no way condoning that you go out and have a cheat meal. I'm not telling you that you should, or you should just get over some addiction, something like that, because believe me, I know it is much harder to beat an addiction than just snap your fingers and just get over it. I understand. So I'm not condoning that you go out and do this. What I'm saying is that sometimes for each of us, there may be situations where to us personally, it might be important. It might matter to us in a certain way that we choose to have something that is not strictly keto or carnivore. And I think there's a difference between having a cheat meal or a treat meal or an off-plan meal or whatever you want to call it. There's a difference between that and going completely off the rails and going back into a pattern of abusing your body with food that is essentially recreational drug use. I understand foods like pasta, bread, soda, sugar, candy, cupcakes, all of this stuff. I understand that now as being a recreational drug, the same as alcohol, the same as other things that are more illegal. And various people choose or choose not to have those things based on their own convictions in their own life. And I think for me, that was one of a few rare circumstances where I said, you know what? I'm going to have this thing, which is one of my favorite foods in the world, mind you. I love Skyline Chili. I always have. But importantly, I'm going to do this because it's honoring his memory by doing the things that he loved and sitting here with my family and talking about the amazing man that he was. I was in a position where it was more important to me to honor his memory than it was to avoid the not feeling very good about 30 minutes later. I also, the next day, went back to eating carnivore, and I did not feel very good after eating that, so it was a good reminder of why I should go back to eating carnivore. But I think it was a really important thing for me, and I think it's something that it's important to recognize that there are social situations or cultural reasons why there's going to be pressure on you. Now, what your decision is about how you handle that, that's up to you. This is something everyone needs to handle in the way that they believe is best for them. And I don't think there's any one way that is going to be most successful for everybody. I mean, everyone could just say, no, we're just not going to do any of that. And we're all just going to refuse any kind of a cheat meal. And we're just going to force ourselves to get over it and whatever. It's very hard to give a good image of keto and carnivore to the people around you when you basically discount everything culturally and socially around you for this amazing life-changing thing that you know to be real and you know to be true. But all the people around you who are still suffering with carbohydrate addiction and are stuck on a standard American diet, they don't know that to be true and they don't know that to be real. And to them, you look like a whack job because you can't even get over your diet long enough to have one meal for such and such person's memory. And I'm not saying that that meal is how you should remember that person. The reality, though, is the society we live in, a lot of people do things like that to remember people. Or you're in social settings around holidays or whatever the case may be. There are so many cultural and social reasons that people are not going to understand your refusal to do something because they don't see this the way that you do. And some of you may still be struggling with this, and you might even have a hard time seeing why you would do it in those situations. And I get it, I've been there. We both have. I understand it can be very difficult in that moment to say no to something because it doesn't even make sense to you sometimes. Why you can't have this thing that is so ingrained culturally and socially into what we do that it seems normal, and now not doing it seems like you're going off the deep end. You know, the number of people that have been like, this whole carnivore thing sounds like a cult. This whole thing sounds like a weird fad diet, you know, all this kind of stuff. People like that on the outside do not understand why we do this. They don't get what we're doing. And I think it's important to realize it's not just about taking care of our own health. Yes, we're taking care of our own health, and that's why every person needs to figure out what is the best way to handle these situations for you. But also, we have to be prepared to deal with the fact that there are social situations where people are not going to understand what methods you're using to deal with that. They may not get it, and you need to be prepared for that, and you need to know why you're doing, what your convictions are that make you choose to do that, and how you can go into that situation prepared so you don't find yourself making a choice that later on you really regret. I don't regret choosing to eat the Skyline Chili. I felt really good about that in my heart and my soul, even if I didn't in my stomach. In the rest of my body, my heart and my soul felt good about that, and I knew that that was a good decision because I had control over that. And if you don't feel like you have control over that, then don't eat whatever the thing is. Make that choice for yourself and be smart about it. But I felt good about that decision. Yeah. I think it was a really good thing, and I think it would have meant a lot to my grandpa. I made that choice. I went right back to carnivore the next day. All was well. I'm a little swollen because we had some things that, you know, probably had some seed oils. I had some more veggies because we were at my parents' house, and you know, my parents are keto, and it's like I don't expect them to go out and buy 1,000 different things that are, you know, all this carnivore stuff that I keep around the house. And we were so busy we didn't have time to try to do like a bunch of carnivore recipes or any of this kind of stuff. It was just not a situation where that was important. So I ate a little bit more keto with my parents, and that's totally fine. Like, yeah, a little swollen or a little, maybe not on top of my game totally, but a couple of days later, I'm heading right back to where I'm good and we're fine. And we're just going to keep rolling and keep doing our thing. So this is some really important stuff for you guys to think about and say, what am I going to do when these situations come up? Not if, when they come up. And I'm not telling you what the right answer is, because you need to decide in your life, in your social settings, with your particular traditions, with the people you're surrounded by, and with your health needs and your mental health needs with addiction and all these kinds of things. You have to be able to figure out what is the best way to handle this and what is the way that means the most to me. So I'm not going to tell you how you have to handle it, because it's not my place to. I just don't think we should be telling everyone else how they should be handling it either, because it's not our place to. We should all support each other in figuring out what's the best way to do this. So that's my story about how I handled it. What are your thoughts on all of that?
Just agree with everything that you're saying. I think when it comes to cheat meals, like you said, there's a big difference between just going off the rails and using the slightest inconvenience to say, oh, it's okay to have a cheat. You, like, for example, you being really busy and deciding, hey, I'm going to go through the McDonald's drive-thru because me getting a Big Mac right now is a lot easier than going to the grocery store and then coming home and cooking a steak. Like,
right.
Okay. But I think making the intentional choice to have a cheat meal, honor Papa, honor his memory, be with your family, not take the attention away from him, and just kind of lay low and keep it, but then to go right back to doing carnivore the next day and right what you're doing. I also think that's a bigger testament for people on the outside, because we are considered, weird sometimes for being carnivores. And people do think that we're a cult, and they think we're a little crazy. And to be honest, we've talked about in previous health vlogs, when you said, I want to be carnivore, I'm like, whoa. Is this a cult? Like, let's look into it.
Right.
So I think that for the people on the outside that are not sure, like all of our standard American diet friends, if they see that you can calmly and wisely make an actual choice and decision to have a cheat meal, to do your thing, and then go right back to doing what you're doing, it's like, well, wow, how great is that, not diet, lifestyle,
right?
That Chris can do this and then immediately go right back to doing what he's doing. So I think it's really great. It also really was eye-opening, though, because it's just so rare, very rare, that Chris actually has a cheat of any kind. Like, he is so self-disciplined, sometimes it makes me mad. So he's so good about that stuff. But what really was amazing to me, being your spouse and just like knowing you well, I thought you really like held things together, and you did a great job throughout this really stressful, couple of days, and dealing clearly with a lot of emotions at, the loss of Papa, and you were doing so well, like from a mental standpoint, because being your wife, I clearly worry about your mental well-being. And before, in the past, you've really struggled with things, like anxiety and depression. And so sometimes when things like that happen, I kind of think I keep a closer eye on you, just because I want to make sure you're okay.
Sure.
But I thought you were doing a really good job with everything, and it seemed like you were doing pretty all right. And then I noticed that you had the cheat meal and the tiny little shot of a chocolate shake. And then you immediately went and sat down, and it's like his face was bright red. He was struggling to breathe. He was like, I'm hot. It wasn't 20 or 30 minutes later, I noticed that you started to become very pessimistic. And you started like that kind of brain foggy. And it's like things that were little deals, like not a big deal at all 5 minutes ago. Now that he ate carbs, now they're a huge deal, and it's making him upset. And so for me, it was like, just a great observation, though, because I watched him handle that, and I was like, and this is what you were doing to yourself every day for how long? And and that's the thing, nowadays, we usually eat 1 meal a day. You used to do that like 3 meals a day, plus snacks. So it was a great reminder of why we do what we do. And I clearly made the choice as well. I had a cheat meal. I don't react to carbs as drastically as you do. I seem to the same stuff Chris did, and I honestly felt fine. I did feel a little bit sleepier later on. Now, that doesn't mean I can eat that every day, because you don't want the scale to go back up, and I know it's not healthy, but I don't have that reaction. But in another way, I do react that way, though, to alcohol.
Sure.
Where it's like, if I have a sip of alcohol, I'm going to be depressed and in the cradle position for like days. Realize the difference between making a conscious choice and decision and then just giving yourself free range to go off the rails.
Yeah.
And the importance of just going right back to what you're doing. I also think we've talked a lot about the why. Like, why do you live a keto and carnivore lifestyle? Like, what is your goal? Okay, sure, weight loss,
right.
Your own health, your own well-being. But I know, like, you've shared that I was your why because you wanted to be a better husband,
right.
and you didn't want me to have to take care of you because you were to the point where you physically could hardly walk.
Right.
We also talked about, like, if we did have kids someday, you're like, I want to be around for it.
Yep.
So we all have our reasons why, and mine's very similar. It's like, I would like to be healthy so that I'm here for you and I'm here for my family, and I can be the best version of myself that I can be.
Yeah.
I think though that people kind of come over food though in that aspect. I think honoring Papa was the right thing to do. And so I ain't losing no sleep over eating one bowl of pasta and having a shot of a chocolate milkshake. Like, I feel like we did the right choice and decision.
Sure.
We went right back to doing what we're doing. Maybe people agree with us, maybe they don't. I think that's up for them to decide. But the other thing is, I think when someone passes away, especially a loved one and a family member, I think that I speak not only has like someone on a low carb, diet lifestyle. I think as just a Christian, I don't think it's very loving and kind to walk into someone's wake and start refusing everything you're served and making a big scene and taking the tension away. I also like staying with your parents. They did a really great job of trying to help us stay as, clean keto as possible. And they were very kind and gracious. I would not want my mother-in-law, after losing her father, to have to go to extra trouble and make extra trips to the grocery store to have extra things for me. Like, that's the last thing they should be worrying about right now.
And they offered. And it was like, no, I'm not putting extra pressure on you. There is no need for that.
It's just, and that's what I'm saying. It's like you sometimes we get so self-absorbed in the world, and I'm guilty of that too. But it's like, I think you just need to start looking at the bigger picture. And so when it comes down to having a cheat meal, if it's not going to completely wreck your world and derail you, like, sure, you're not going to feel good after. Yeah. But like, there are choices, and they are inevitable. You will eventually run across a situation where you have to make a decision to have a cheat meal or not. And so that's why we do these health vlogs, is, take the information, learn from our mistakes, learn from the things we do. And it's like, make your own educated decisions though on how you would like to handle it, because it's not if, it's literally just a matter of when. But I feel really good about our decision, and I guess you can say that's why we decided to cheat on a carnivore diet. And I don't regret that. But I'm doing right back to doing what we've been doing.
Absolutely. So. I also think there's a really important principle here with these kinds of things, which is, some people call it the 80-20. I prefer to keep it more like 90-10 because I just want to tighten the screws a little bit. But whatever. It's basically the 80-20 principle is, if 80% of what you do is great and 20% is where you're kind of, not got it figured out, like, you're doing great. And so I look at that with diet too. And especially since, like I said, I like to tighten the screws a little bit. And if I can get 90% of the way to just great on carnivore, and that other 10% plays around a little bit, like, sometimes that 10% is great and that means I'm 100%. And sometimes that 10% is really not so good because of situations like going to his funeral and eating Skyline Chili. But you know what? If that 10% is what I need to make this realistic for me to live this lifestyle, great. It's not an excuse. I'm not using that as an excuse to, I'm just going to go order a pizza today. I'm just going to go to the Chinese restaurant and pig out. I'm going to go to the grocery store and buy all the snack cakes on aisle 7.
You also, like, I know for me, one of my bad habits back in the day was, like, I was a really big emotional eater.
Yep, me too.
And that's the thing. You weren't, and there was a day where Chris and I would not have been able to probably eat that and then go right back to doing what we were doing, right? But like, you and I have been on this lifestyle, not diet, lifestyle for years. And him and I have daily put in work to improve ourselves and our diet and our health. And so now we're just at a point where, for us, at this point in time, it just doesn't derail what we're doing to have something like that and then go right back to doing what we're doing. It's not like you're emotional eating, you're binge eating, you're bored eating, you're not trying to numb pain. It's like, literally, this is a social situation where it's appropriate. And so we don't put the attention on ourselves, and we don't act unkind or put extra expectations on people that don't need that. We just show up, we do what we do. We have, fun. We participate with the family.
Yep.
And then we go right back to doing what we're doing the next day.
Yep.
And that, I think it's really simple.
And as a result, we inspire a whole lot more people than we would if we walked in and made it a big deal about us being carnivore and we can't eat all this stuff and whatever.
People that do that, you look crazy because you're acting like you're afraid of a damn bowl of pasta.
Yeah.
I mean, do you know how ridiculous that is?
Yeah.
Especially when most people who do not know, eat pasta probably multiple times a week, maybe a couple times a day.
Right.
But it's like, why are you're making everyone else essentially feel weird and off, and you're rubbing them the wrong way to where then when you talk about your carnivore diet and all your weight loss, they're like, well, geez, if it makes you act crazy and you're scared of a bowl of pasta, then
why would I want to do that?
Yeah, well, and also like it's just a bad witness. Honestly, it's like if you're scared of eating pasta, it's like you're afraid of noodles.
There's a difference between choosing not to eat things because you know they're not good for you, and living in fear of those things, where if someone even suggests that you eat it, that you fly off the handle and talk about how that's killing you. I'm not saying that I don't think carbs will kill you. I do think an excessive amount of carbs will slowly poison and kill you over your period of your life. I totally believe that's the case. The problem is, one bowl of pasta, unless you are a person who has that I'm teetering on the edge carb addiction you're fighting, which that's a real thing. I've been there. When you're in that kind of position, I understand. But most people I meet are not there. And I'm not saying that most people aren't carb addicted. I think most of the world is carb addicted. But most people are not at a level of carb addiction where one serving of pasta is the thing that's going to cause them to go off the rails, and in 6 months they're going to be dead. There's not very many people that are at that point. There are people that are, but not a lot of them.
Well, and I would, as someone who, has I've been really open about my struggles with alcohol. I don't get I play in bars all the time, right? I don't look at alcohol and go, oh man, I really wish I would have had that. It took me time to get there. Can I walk in the grocery store and walk past a 6-pack of PBR or whatever and be like, oh, I can't get it today. I'm to the point now where it's like we've confronted these issues and I've dealt with them and I've healed on and moved from it to where you don't live in fear. And so just like people that are alcoholics and all that, it's like you just need to know where you're at in your health journey and you just adjust to things as need be.
So you can walk by the 6-pack. Some alcoholics can't. And that's fine. And so therefore they avoid going to bars. They avoid going to certain places in the store, whatever, because it can't even be in front of them. And you know what? Kudos to them for knowing that about themselves and making the choice to not do that. That takes a lot of willpower. And I think that's great. The problem is there are a lot of people in the keto and carnivore world that I think our ego as human beings, and I'm guilty of this, so I'm not preaching here, I'm telling you I understand. Our ego makes us want to feel special, and it makes us want to feel like we're somehow the exception, because that makes it harder for us than everybody else, or it makes us less responsible for the choices we made than everyone else. I mean, it's human nature to want to be this way. I'm the same way, and I have to fight against this daily to realize I'm not special. I'm not different than everybody else. I have my own unique brand of it. Everybody does. But we're all struggling with some varying level of the same things because that's what it is to be a human being. So some people are on that that natural distribution curve at the far end where they can have every cheat meal in the world they want and it's literally no struggle. Then there's some people on this end over here that if they even look at a picture of a bowl of pasta, they're going to go off the rails. And then a majority of people are somewhere in the middle where they need to find the various situations and approaches that work for them, because maybe they can handle a little, maybe they can handle a lot. They're just having to figure that out for themselves, and we all need to support each other in the process of figuring that out. But you need to be understanding of the situations that are going to come up in your life where you're going to have to make that choice. And when you make that choice, you need to decide how important is not having that whatever it is that I really want to have versus the effect it's going to have in my life socially, culturally, whatever, to not do so. And you decide what's right for you in that place. Just don't beat everyone else up if they make a different decision than you. And that's, I think, the big issue with cheat meals, And this is why when you see this on other channels, it's like, well, cheat meals are bad and you basically shouldn't do it, and that's the end of the story. And I agree, there's nothing about it that is good for your body. There's nothing physiologically that is good for you by putting cheat meal food into your stomach. It's pure mouth pleasure. There's nothing nutritionally that is doing that is good for you. It doesn't mean that it's worth beating each other up over it. And that doesn't mean that maybe there's not times where, if you're a person who can control that and it doesn't affect you and send you off the rails, maybe there's a social situation or a cultural reason where it's something you choose to do. And I'm not saying you have to, but maybe you choose to. And this week, we chose to.
Yeah.
And that was important to us. So I think it's really important to understand where you lie on this and to realize that not everybody is just like you, so that you can be supportive and understanding of how they have to handle it for themselves. And if someone is doing it and then you see it becoming an excuse for doing it again and again and again and again and again, we have to figure out, how do we, in a supportive and kind manner, help somebody see that without sounding like we're crazy and living in fear of things that don't have any control over us. Remember, the human body is designed to live off of proper human diet food, but in times where there was no other food, human beings do have the biodiversity to at least survive on other kinds of food. I'm not saying that that's ideal. I'm not saying that's what you should be eating. But occasionally, if it gets into your diet, that's as ancestrally appropriate as eating all of the meat in the world. We just live in a society where we have such access to stable food now that it's like we've forgotten that pretty much everyone before the invention of refrigeration didn't necessarily have access to all of the best food all the time. And sometimes they ate what they had to survive. Our bodies are designed to handle that in small quantities.
Sure.
It's not ideal. It's not going to make you feel probably good, but our bodies did come from a background of eating a few things, because if we didn't, we were going to die. So I'm not saying you should use a cheat meal because, oh, well, humans, thousands and tens of thousands of years ago and whatever would have had to do this. I'm not saying go ahead and just go for the cheat meal because, it's totally built in for you to do that. I'm not saying that. But I am saying that if you choose to do that, you don't have to live in fear of what that one thing is going to do to your body, because your body can handle that one thing if the other 90, 95, 98, 99% of the time, whatever you can do, you're putting the right stuff in it and you're not continuing to poison it with more carbs and more junk and more seed oils and more sugar and more chemicals and all of that. When you take all that out, that one cheat meal, not going to make you feel very good, but that's not the thing that's going to kill you. So if you're a person who can't handle that because it throws you off the rails, I understand, and it is smart to stay away from it. If you're a person who can handle that, I think it's okay if you want to choose that for a particular reason, provided you know that right away you need to go back to doing what is good for you, and you need to not let that feeling bad or the tiredness or whatever be an excuse to just continue to do it.
I agree. Also, something that I think is really cool is, talking about like your recipes. I think this is awesome because, most of the time, like for dinner and stuff, Chris and I eat like eggs and meat patties. Maybe I have a little bit of veggie kind of a thing. We eat pretty simply, pretty straightforward. But when we were at this event and we had the pasta and all the stuff, and Chris was feeling terrible, the next day he told me that he had an idea for a recipe video. So would you like to tell them what recipe inspired this? Tell them what's happening.
Yes. So we had Skyline Chili, which is the pasta and the chili and the cheese. So this coming Saturday, I'm going to show you guys the modified version of my ramen noodle recipe from the noodles, and I'm going to show you how we make spaghetti, and I'm going to make several different things with it. I'm going to show you the noodles. I'm going to make several different things, but one of the things I'm going to make is a Skyline Chili done carnivore style, minus the spices, because Skyline Chili has a lot of spices, but it's definitely keto. And that's the thing, Skyline with the chili and the cheese is actually very keto at the very least, and almost carnivore minus the just a lot of spices. It's the pasta that is really such a problem. But if we had been in a situation where I could have made carnivore pasta easily, I could have just thrown some in a container, gone, put the chili and cheese over it, and been like 98, 99% of the way to carnivore, and turned that 10% into like 1%.
And I think this is why you make recipes.
Yep.
It's not that we eat them every day as well, but it's like we're very conscious of when we have a cheat meal, and then you create things like this because, like you said, what if we would have had time?
Right.
What if you would have been able to still get together with the family? You still could have eaten what everyone else was eating.
Right.
You just, switch out the noodles for your carnivore ones, and it's like you wouldn't have had to go off the off the rails. You wouldn't have had to have the cheat meal. Really, it's like it's just a whole different perspective, and that's why I know I appreciate what you do with creating these recipes, and that's why I think a lot of people watching do too, and that's why I think your recipes are so great.
This is why people who are dogmatic and just jump down our throats about doing recipes like this for whatever reason, it's why they just don't get it.
Right.
Because guess what? That's great if you can do steak, salt, water, and you're happy that way, and wonderful, perfect. What about the other 99% of people who either can't or don't want to or don't even know what low carb is about, let alone being able to do steak, salt, water, and they think you're crazy?
Right.
How do you reach those people? I'm not trying to reach dogmatic carnivores and convince them to eat recipes. I'm trying to reach standard American diet people and convince them that low carb is a better way and that they don't have to give up everything overnight to do it. I'm not trying to save the people who already know the truth and are healthy. I'm trying to save the people who are fat, sick, and dying, and so brain fogged they're completely unaware of what's going on in their own life, and they have such bad information that they've been built their entire perspective on that they don't even realize what they're doing to themselves. That's who I'm trying to reach with this, and that's why the recipes matter so much. And people that are like, you can't possibly lose weight. I've lost 130 pounds using recipes. Could I have lost even more by this point? Would it have been faster if I'd gone meat, salt, water? I don't know, maybe. Does that matter? Is there a time clock on how fast I have to lose the weight, or it doesn't count?
No.
Is there a trophy for being the best carnivore?
I don't think so.
No. I had someone that commented on my bread video, and they said, doing a replica of some kind of recipe like this, or a replica food, physiologically defeats the purpose of a carnivore diet. And I really had to sit and try to figure out what in the world kind of logic that even is. So you think that if you put the ingredients that are good for you together in a way that looks like something else, that when that goes into your stomach, it magically turns into something bad for you? That's the level of illogical thinking that even as a carnivore, I have a hard time understanding. And I'm like, you're crazy. You're absolutely insane. Now imagine how someone who's on a standard American diet living off of Cheetos and Doritos and cupcakes and soda and pasta and rice and all this other stuff, who is 100, 200, 300 pounds overweight, and they have brain fog and they're in pain and they can't move, and they've been told their whole life they need to count calories and they need to eat plant-based and then all these other things. Imagine how that person is going to understand you saying something like, well, if it even looks like bread, it's automatically bad. That's insanity, and people need help. So we're stopping the insanity, and we're creating recipes to help people that need help. And we're telling people, if you have a cheat meal because you went to someone's funeral and you honored their memory, don't beat yourself up. Don't use it as an excuse to keep doing it, but don't beat yourself up for doing it. And certainly don't let other people beat you up because you're not as good at it as they are. If you're one of those people out there and you have those cheat meals from time to time, or you have this balance or whatever you want to call it, understand you're not alone. And it's okay if you're trying to get better and you're trying to eat keto or carnivore, you're trying to improve your health, and there's situations along the way where it's not perfect. It's really okay. It being really okay is not the same as do it whenever you want. That is not the same thing. You have to make good choices because you're not going to get good results without making the good and sometimes hard choices. But that is completely different than being perfect at it and then beating yourself up, or certainly letting someone else beat you up if you're not perfect at doing it. 90-10. 90-10. It's the best you can possibly do. And I think all of the people who are, meat, salt, water, perfect carnivores that are very judgmental about it. I'm not saying there aren't people out there who are pretty much meat, salt, water, stable, consistently. I'm sure there are. But the people who are beating other people up for not being that way and think if you have a cheat meal, you deserve to burn, and these kinds of people, I bet anything they're either not perfect in their carnivore diet, and that's why they're lashing out, because they're trying to see the fault in others that they know in themselves and want to ignore. Or even if they are good at that, imagine all of the other things in their life that are a mess, and all of the things that they're trying to use this thing to take attention away from all of the other ways that they have major issues in their life. I've been alive for 36 years, and that's not a long time compared to a lot of other people I know. There's a lot of people that have a lot more experience than me, but I will say in 36 years, I've never seen someone who jumps down everyone else's throat about anything that didn't have a real serious issue somewhere else in their life.
Yeah.
Because if you're the kind of person who's lashing out at people, you're trying to ignore the faults in yourself so that you can go and pay attention to faults that you believe are there in other people to try to make yourself feel better about what is wrong in your own life. I've never seen an exception to that. I've never seen a single person who jumps down other people's throats about things that's none of their business, that didn't have a major issue where they are flat failing in their own life. And sometimes willingly failing, like they are living a horrible life or making terrible choices, or just a terrible human being, and they're using that as a way to try to hide it. So if you're not perfect and you occasionally have a cheat meal and there's a social situation that you say, you know what, this is the thing I'm going to do, I think that's totally fine as long as you have the right control over it and as long as you don't let it become an excuse and a stumbling block. I think that's totally okay, and I think that's the balance that is ancestrally appropriate in our lives, because our bodies came from a place and a time when we had to be able to do that. That's our thoughts. What do you guys think? Drop it in the comments down below. Do you have cheat meals? Do you think cheat meals are a good idea, a bad idea? Why or why not? How do you handle those kinds of situations? And everybody get ready for this incredible pasta recipe. I'm doing this chili version. I'm doing keto spaghetti and meatballs. I'm doing in the live stream that's going to be coming up the day before this, I'm actually going to use some of that pasta, and I'm going to do some Alfredo. Like, there's all kinds of things, and I'm telling you guys, this pasta is the closest thing to actual pasta that I have ever had on a carnivore diet. And I've made a bunch of pasta recipes of my own, and I thought they were good. This one blows them all out of the water, and this is the only pasta recipe of mine for noodles that I will probably ever make again, unless I come up with one even better. But this is the one, so I'm going to share it with you guys, and it's probably a lot easier than you think, but man, is it good. It's unbelievable. So we're going to show you guys how to do that, and maybe that way if you come across a situation where everybody's getting together for a spaghetti dinner, you can just bring some of your carnivore noodles and not say a thing, and take your carb count from here, maybe down to here. Maybe go from 90-10 down to 95-5, maybe even down to 98-2, 99-1. Whatever it is you got to do. Guys, thank you for watching. Make sure, if you haven't, to go over to the CCN Studios channel and subscribe. I'm starting my Monday morning motivational live streams. Right? That's going to be going on every Monday morning at 10 a.m. By the time you see this video, I will have just done the first one, so I'm going to link the Studios channel down below. I'd love to see you guys over there. If you're watching this on the Studios channel, make sure you're subscribed, and make sure that you have an alarm set to let you know that that Monday morning motivational live stream is there. We're going to use that to get our head right, set our sights on the week, and make sure that we're just encouraging each other so we can all go forward, do a better job with our keto and carnivore lifestyles every single week. And we're going to do it together because you're not alone. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stick around for that recipe video coming on Saturday. This is Chris Cooking Nashville, my beautiful wife, Ash Taylor. You guys eat your meat, even if it's in a cheat meal. Love your life. We're going to see you right here at the dining room table and in the kitchen and in the new studio for recipes and motivation and health vlogs and everything else we can do to support you guys.
You come here often?
Every day, it seems.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So do I. You're so cute, even if you're not a real carnivore, because you had a cheat meal.
Even if I'm not a real carnivore right now?
Yeah.
Well, you can take my medals away, I guess.
All right. Give them to the dog.